It's the Kyle Hyman Show on Redeemer Radio.
This is Kyle Hyman, and joining us for Theology of the Body Thursday, once again, is our executive director here at Redeemer Radio, Cindy Black. Thanks for being here, Cindy.
It seems like I was just here.
Yeah. Weeks fly by.
They do.
Yeah. And it's interesting going from week to week, talking about different topics and how sometimes it relates to current events. And you brought up this idea of talking about this morning. And in the email, you were talking about how everybody is talking about this. Everybody is talking about the sexual abuse scandal, the crisis. And I mean, really, if you look beyond just the past couple weeks in the Catholic Church, the world as a whole is struggling with this issue. And yes, everybody has been talking about this, but I don't think everybody has been talking about what we're going to be talking about today and how theology of the body fits in with this and maybe some of the underlying causes of this. I feel like we're dealing surface level and maybe not even getting down low enough to get to the roots of some of this. And some of this is prompted, I was thinking back, episode 507, just a couple days ago, we had Dr. Paul Gondreau talking about Humana Vitae and natural law and how these universally agreed upon things that we'd say are right or wrong or good or bad. There's obviously some things that we debate on, but there's definitely some universal truths that everybody would agree on. And one of those is sexual abuse.
Right.
Seems like, as far as I can tell, across the board, people of any faith belief or lack of faith belief agree that sexual abuse is wrong. And that is one of the reasons, if not the reason, we're so appalled by any instance of sexual abuse. I guess the first question would be, why is that something that we can all agree on?
Because as much as our culture wants to conveniently say that sex has no meaning, it does. It goes to the very core of our being, and it means something. Mm-hmm. So the meaning of sex is a mutual bodily self-gift between husband and wife. Mm-hmm. That's what it was created for. That's the meaning inherent in it. So when somebody forces that, it is not a self-gift. Mm-hmm. It is a taking of the other against their will. It's betraying their free will that God gave them to do with their bodies as they choose, and God created us to freely choose the good, even though concupiscence makes it difficult for that, and that's where grace comes in. But it really goes back to that notion of human sexuality is to be freely given to another. Like, I give you my body, I give you my whole self. And that it isn't just I give you my body and it doesn't mean anything. It's a giving of our person. And that's why, the wounds of sexual abuse run so deep and last so long. Mm-hmm. The body heals of physical wounds in time. Most wounds are healed in time, but the scars to the soul, the psyche, the emotional side of us, the mental side of us, those last. And I've forced myself, because it literally makes me sick, to read some of the accounts of things that happen to not only children, but that is the most horrifying for me to read because of their innocence and the role of adults in, like, every adult in protecting every child. Yeah. But even in the cases of adults where power was used to take away their free will, to be manipulated into that. It's horrifying to read, but I force myself in a sense of knowing what's going on, but also to be able to share in that suffering and make me even more likely to be part of, the reparation and things like that. But when we read it, that's why we're so horrified, because we know we can feel their pain, and they're like, it doesn't just go away, the trauma that is experienced. So I think that really points to this integrated notion of our bodies and our sexuality that St. John Paul II was really trying to convey, his gift to the church and to the world, gives us a whole context to be able to apply to this situation.
So why do you think this isn't part of the conversation? I mean, I am flooded with articles and blogs and comments on social media, the news, with all kinds of different angles on the problems, the solutions, and the situations happening. But I'm not seeing people getting back to the core of what is the purpose of our sexual expression in the first place. Even amongst Catholics.
Right. I think that's, as horrific as this all is, we know that God can bring good out of the worst situation. I mean, that's Good Friday and Easter Sunday.
Right.
And I think that's the good that we've got to turn to, that we've got to say, okay, we're talking about all this horrific stuff. What is the remedy? And we've got to look at that. The remedy is helping people to not misuse their sexuality, to understand that true joy and fulfillment come through chastity and self-gift, not through giving into sexual urges and dominating others. That not only wounds the victim, but it deeply wounds the perpetrator. And, as a church, we need to be concerned for their souls. So I think getting back to this call to chastity, the notion of self-gift, which we all struggle with, but I think there has to be a recognition in people when the struggle for chastity is to the level where they're tempted to abuse, to take steps, just like Scripture says, if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off. Sure. We've got to put things in place where people choose to deny themselves, and even if it means removing them, it absolutely means removing them from public priestly ministry, but helping them to get back to this notion of self-gift, and that doesn't mean putting them back in situations where there's access.
Sure. We're talking with Cindy Black here for Theology of the Body Thursday, talking about the connection between the gravity of sexual abuse and the universal understanding of that, but maybe the connection that's not made between the importance of our sexuality in general and how that maybe is being misused more than we're admitting as a culture. Is this the time to have these conversations with people? Like, say, a conversation with an atheist who's outraged by this. Is this the time to say, why are you outraged about sexual abuse? Is there something about sexuality that points to something greater than just physical abuse?
Absolutely. I think it is, especially given the context of the relationships and things like that, to ask the question. And as a journeying with the person, because that is a common ground. The person that maybe is an atheist is disturbed by this and sees the wrongness of this, and that can be a commonality that we share with them, and then kind of move forward to see what other things we have in common, and why they're abhorred by this. Okay. Saying, I agree with you, but help me to understand with your stance on, there is no God, there is no afterlife. Why does this matter so much? Right.
Okay, so maybe we can work our way down here, because I'd like to eventually get to how do we talk with younger people. But for those that are adults, for those that maybe have grown up with a mindset that you do whatever makes you happy, and but then they have this other side of them that says, I see that this is a problem. This particular expression of your sexuality is not a positive thing. How do you maybe separate this this gray area that they are maybe making white. I don't. This means it's like
Right,
this
yeah.
is good, this is bad, and they're grouping a lot of things in the good section.
Right. And that's
that maybe should be scooted closer towards the bad, not as extreme, but
right. And that's really what this gets at, is that we live in a culture where not only are we told that sex doesn't have meaning, but even those people who see it as having a deeper meaning and trying to live chaste are often ridiculed and seen as, backwards, unliberated. I know I addressed an issue with somebody that I did ministry with, and she called me an uptight prude who wanted to suppress my womanhood. And those are the things that our culture says about anyone who wants to show restraint, is that it's somehow like almost damaging to them rather than truly being liberating. So the so-called sexual revolution was kind of, do whatever urges you have, that these, if you have the urges, you must act on them. Well, if somebody has that attitude, then why do they see the problem with,
right.
with sexual abuse? One person clearly has the urges. Yeah. So herein lies the problem. We are not created to act on every urge we have, or I would be eating entire gallons of ice cream every night. So moving towards that integrated notion of our sexuality, and that it does have a meaning and it has a proper place, and that we're called to that notion of self-gift. Did I get at kind of what you were?
Yeah, and we're not going to have time to get into any kind of detail, and maybe we can find somebody that's maybe more of an expert in this particular area. But whenever we're talking with extremely young people, do you have any suggestions on how we teach them the proper view of sexuality, and then also maybe kind of protect them against potential abuse, like what to do and what to avoid, kind of thing?
A couple of things. And how long do we have?
About half a minute.
Okay. Then maybe this is a next week continuation, but is talking about that the body is sacred and has a purpose. Each thing in our body, except the appendix, has a known purpose and function, and teaching children that at different points in their life, that their genitals are used right now for being with. And they're not toys, they're not other things, but they are also very sacred things, and they're meant to be covered, and they're not meant to be revealed to strangers and things like that.
Yeah.
There are some good resources coming out for children on theology of the body. So why don't we plan on picking up more of that, how to talk to children?
I think that's an important topic, and I need it for myself on how to talk to about my kids, so that'll be really good. All right, so that'll be coming up on a future Theology of the Body Thursday. Our thanks to Notre Dame Federal Credit Union for underwriting this show and for their support. And we'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Kyle Hyman Show. Until then, remember to leave room for the Holy Spirit.